Hello, and welcome to Cutting Through. My name is Mitchell Plitnick. The peace plan for Gaza, a joke to begin with. I think anybody with any sort of functioning sensory apparatus known to man would recognize that it was useless. It is the eternal shame of the United Nations Security Council that it endorsed both Trump's Board of Peace and this ridiculous plan he had for Gaza. But it's there. And it's going nowhere as expected. The first phase of Trump's plan has been the one-sided disaster that I think everyone reasonably expected it would be. Israel got back all its captives, dead or alive, and has not ceased to kill Palestinians, having killed over 600 and wounded, I think, over 1,800 at this point, since the ceasefire was declared. It never really happened. They have not fulfilled their promises to allow aid in. Palestinians, most of them, are still out in the elements. That is how they are living this winter. Um, we will never really have a fully accurate count of how many people that deprivation has killed. But it's almost certainly far more than the number that have been killed by Israeli bombs and bullets. But more than that, it's well, maybe not more, but aside from that, it's also not moving forward on the things that even Trump wanted. So, for example, the Board of Peace is having its first meeting today. I think it just wrapped up as I'm recording this, and we will see what comes out of that. But whatever plans they may have for an so-called international stabilization force for Gaza depend on some sort of plan to to disarm Hamas and institute Palestinian policing in the Strip before this secure stabilization force would even deploy. Even the most willing countries, which so far has been limited to Indonesia and to some extent Pakistan, that have been willing to send troops to be part of this stabilization force have made it clear they will not participate in disarming Hamas. They are there to be peacekeepers. They do not want to be seen by their own people as fighting against the Palestinians. Um, so you have this really great limitation. So of course, therefore, the United States has turned its focus on disarming Hamas, with Donald Trump repeatedly claiming that Hamas agreed to disarm, which is not the truth at all. It's a blatant and outright lie. In fact, Hamas was very specific when agreeing to the terms of the ceasefire, what it was agreeing to. It was agreeing to phase one, which was that they would stop the offensive operations and would uh, release all the living hostages, the remaining living hostages, and get back all of the bodies of the deceased hostages. In exchange for which there would be some release of Palestinian hostages from Israel, although Israel still holds some 6,000 such hostages, and they are hostages. They are not prisoners of war. They are not criminals. Many of them are held in administrative detention, so they are held without charge or trial. They are held without reason. They are held for being Palestinian, uh, and are kept in unspeakable conditions by a country that has the facilities to keep them in at least sanitary conditions, which they do not, which certainly was not something that was available to Palestinians, whether they were hostages or Palestinians of Gaza during the genocide. That's the situation. Beyond that, Israel is continuing, and we're going to talk much more about this. Israel is continuing to arm Palestinian militias um, that are there to attack and undermine Hamas, and are um, therefore preventing any possibility of Hamas agreeing to any sort of decommissioning of their weapons. It would literally be suicide. These militias that Israel is backing would kill them immediately. There's really no question about this. So Israel's aware of this. Israel knows what it's doing. More than likely, the American officials are also aware of it. Whether they like it or not, we can, speculate on. And we can even speculate on whether they really know what Israel's doing, I suppose, but it seems unlikely that they're unaware of it. Israel certainly realizes what they're doing. So we're at this point where, the disarmament of Hamas is unlikely to happen. Israel is very likely to reignite the full scale genocide. They have already drawn up the plans. They are waiting. They had targeted early March to do this, according to reports that surfaced at the end of last year. And they certainly seem on track to do just that. And it seems like at least some forces in the Trump administration, probably including the president himself, are on board with that because they seem to be setting up the conditions for Israel to have every excuse to do just what it has been planning to do. So the question then becomes, the question of Hamas disarmament and the question of policing Gaza. So there was a pretty notable report that came from the Daily Telegraph, a right-wing news source in Britain, um, that that stated, and the United States, by the way, did not deny that they are planning to draw Palestinian police from the clans in Gaza that make up these bandit militias, most of which are on the payroll of the Israelis, some of which simply operate as criminal gangs. That's who they are turning to for Gaza police. They will not use the police that were trained by Hamas because Israel has already, during the genocide, made it clear that those people are considered Hamas fighters. They are not Hamas fighters in any way, shape, or form. They're civil servants, like police are everywhere. That's all they ever were. They were never part of the Hamas military wing at all. In any way, shape, or form. They were kept completely separate from that. They were trained as police. Now, were there problems with those police? Sure. Are there problems with our police? Yeah. Are there problems with Israeli police? Sure. Are there problems with British police? Yes. We can talk about policing, and we should talk about policing and the whole concept behind it in a very very serious way. But those people who were employed, because remember, Hamas was the government such as it was under occupation in Gaza and under siege in Gaza, but they ran the civil administration in Gaza. They therefore ran the police, but the police were a civil body. But those people who are the only people who know how to do policing at all in Gaza are off the table. Many other Palestinians are off the table. So where are they going to draw from to create this Palestinian police force? And they're turning to these armed clans. So who are these clans? They're largely formed along family lines, but these are criminals. You might have heard stories about them, and it is ironic the way these stories were used during the full-blown genocide in Gaza. You probably heard stories about Hamas, allegedly Hamas bandits stealing aid, looting it, and hoarding it in places and giving it to themselves. That wasn't Hamas. That were these people. That was who did this. Okay, that was these people who were stealing aid, and but everybody who was armed in Gaza could easily be called Hamas, and they were used. So Israel certainly knew who these people were and who was really doing it, but never wasted opportunity for good propaganda. These militias, these clan militias, have been tied to organized crime for decades, long before the genocide, long before the siege. This is part of who these, so you could think of them as mob families. Um, People in Gaza are aware of this. They know who these people are, and they have a deep, deep, deep distrust of them. They do not have allies. They do not have supporters among Palestinians other than those who, you know, are working with them, or support crime, essentially. Um, these clans have also attacked people who crossed them, murdered them, kidnapped them. These are, when you think about criminal gangs, that's who these people are. At least two of them have been have either actively fought alongside or have voiced support for ISIL, the Islamic State. So, I mean, this is who, so the headline, of course, is U.S. and Israel turn to ISIS to police Gaza. And there's some truth in that. It's not an unfair statement. Although I think it stretches reality a bit. It's not These people aren't exactly ISIL. They're not exactly part of that, but these are gangs who are connected to criminality throughout the Middle East, and therefore have that connection to the Islamic State, who are basically criminals. Um, those ties are very, very well known. We should, it's important, I think, to note that this plan is not well liked uh, among certainly among Europeans, but also there's quite a bit of dissent in the Trump administration, and particularly in the United States military, that are very concerned about working with these people, as well they should be. We have seen what happens when you empower criminal elements in a country to pursue your own political ends. We all remember the experience back in the 80s when the Reagan administration and subsequently the Bush administration supported the Mujahideen in Afghanistan that became Al Qaeda. I think we paid a price for that. Maybe we shouldn't do that again. And I think that's some of the cooler heads in the U.S. military are saying just that. But more than that, these, to the extent that these people, the reason these people have any trust from Washington is because they work for Israel. Israel has been funding them. This came out well over a year ago, I think close to 2 years ago, that Israel was backing, arming, and funding these clan militias. That has not stopped. In fact, Israel has accelerated that since the so-called ceasefire was put into place. One of the militias that we're talking about calls itself the Popular Forces, which is about as Orwellian a name as you can get. They are far from popular in any sense of the word, not just in terms of people supporting them, but they are not of the people. They are, again, they're a crime family. That's what we're talking about. And the Popular Forces um, are a group that is known for their thieving, for being connected with drug trafficking, and of course with violence and murder. Their former leader was Yasser Abu Shabab. He was killed in December of 2025. Um, there's some dispute as to whether another clan killed him or this was an internal dispute in his own clan. Some people have accused Hamas of it, but this seems unlikely. Hamas would have had no problem saying that they did it, and Hamas was in the wake of the ceasefire, was certainly bringing some of these militia leaders to their own form of justice, which was basically, drumhead trials and for the most part, summary executions. You heard probably something about that. That was reported in the West as Hamas randomly killing Palestinian civilians in Gaza, which was, again, just a complete fabrication. We can dislike the fact that there was no due process, that there was no trials, and et cetera, et cetera. Under the circumstances, there's no facilities for such things in Gaza, but we can talk about that, and we can be opposed to it, and that's fine. But it is not at all like they were just randomly killing civilians in Gaza, killing Palestinians in Gaza. That's not what was happening, and it wasn't simply people who they didn't like. These were people who had, they were killing collaborators, and they were killing people who had actively worked to kill and otherwise harass Hamas members during this 2-year genocide, um, at the behest of Israel. Now, again, think about the reprisal how you want, but these were not random killings, whatever else you want to say about them. Um, and again, some of the people involved with popular forces are believed to have at least worked with ISIL. Um, the the stories that I'm referring to, um, uh, featured a one particular clan called the Darmush clan, that's centered in Gaza City, and I just have to tell you, I mean, this I think shows how these things are used by Israel and the United States, because uh, in the wake of the ceasefire and some of the commentary I had about how Hamas was behaving, how Israel was behaving, to try and discredit me, one particularly stupid commenter, a real idiot, um, decided to say, "Oh, well, what about the Dalmush clan? What about these? Basically portraying them as innocent, poor innocent Palestinians who were being rounded up and killed by Hamas just because of their clan affiliation, et cetera, et cetera." I mean, the Dalmush clan has been on Israel's payroll throughout this genocide. But more than that, um, they have they've been involved with kidnappings and hostage taking. They were the key figures in the group, the Army of Islam, that kidnapped BBC correspondent Alan Johnston back in 2007, held him for 114 days. They're known for what they are, but because most people have no idea. This is very much inside baseball, of the day-to-day goings on in Gaza. And if we know one thing about social media, is it encourages anybody who has no idea what the hell's going on to argue with people who are actual subject matter experts, who actually do this work and do this research, and yes, such as myself and many others. And it enables those people to talk as if they know what the hell they're talking about. And if you're really stupid, you do like this person did, and make a fool of yourself, and based on, because you heard a fact, which was that Hamas is killing members of the Daghoush clan. Um, you heard a fact, and are unable to contextualize it, which is what happens on social media all the time, as we all know. So one American official talking to the Telegraph said that the reality on the ground is that while lots of Gazans don't like Hamas, they really don't like or trust the clans. They see them as criminals. That is correct. In every piece of that, Hamas is not an overwhelmingly popular band. It certainly has significant support. That support has ebbed and flowed both before the genocide and during it. Um, it has often been higher in the West Bank than it is in Gaza, which I think also tells you something. At times, their support has been over 50%. At times, it's been considerably under when you look at when you follow Palestinian polling. But there's always been, and there certainly still is, a large sector of Palestinian population that wants nothing to do with Hamas. It doesn't like Hamas. It doesn't support its Islamist ideology, doesn't support its methods, doesn't support its strategy. Okay, and that's fine. That is a choice that every individual Palestinian should be able to make. But this idea that seems to be prevalent, at least among the Americans. I'm pretty sure the Israelis, including the far right, all know better than this. But among the Americans, there seems to be this idea that they really believe that they're trying to free Palestinians from Hamas, not from the Israeli siege and the Israeli occupation, the Israeli apartheid, and the Israeli genocide, but from Hamas. I think they believe that, and they believe that if they give people the opportunity to get away from Hamas, Palestinians will take it. They will not take it if it means running into the arms of these clans. It simply will not happen. But you see the value from the Israeli point of view. As I said, this moron that made the comment on I forget if it was a post or a video of mine months ago. Um, the use is that people will look at these clans as just Palestinian civilians, just Palestinian people. So Palestinians are rejecting them. Why? Because they're willing to be part of the police force. That is the argument that will be made. Not maybe that there's something wrong with these people. That maybe that there is an issue that they don't that Palestinians don't want a bunch of thugs to make up the entirety of the Palestinian police force. We have enough problems whenever we put together a police force with thugs joining them. We don't need to actually seek out thugs to make up 100% of the force. Um, they and of course, as this official points out, and actually, let me just quote him because I think they put it. I don't know if it's he or she, so they put it very well. They said there's also a concern that the more ideological members of the administration will at some point turn around and say, we've given you the opportunity to leave Hamas. If you're still there, you must be a sympathizer. Then Israel gets the green light to restart the war. And again, I think that's right. I think that's exactly what we're seeing going on here. And again, I don't know if the Americans understand this. I know the Israelis do. I know that the Israelis are doing exactly this. So I think what you're going to see is, Palestinians are going to be offered to go to this so-called safe zone in what used to be Rafah, and what used to be a treasured and historic, by the way, Palestinian city in Gaza that has been completely leveled by Israel, completely destroyed. And they're going to be offered the opportunity to go there to this safe zone under the protection of these criminal gangs and at the mercy, of course, of the Israelis and the Americans. And when Palestinians naturally say no, which most will, especially because even the whole idea of a safe zone, I think Palestinians have experienced what happens when you go to what Israel and the United States call a safe zone. You're fish in a barrel. That's what happened for 2 years, and it was probably what will happen again. Um, so I think Palestinians have every reason to say no to this offer, but then they're going to say, oh, so you're embracing Hamas. You see, as we said all along, all Palestinians are Hamas. You're all legitimate targets. We can kill all of you. That is where I think we're going. Um, and it is going to be sold to people in the most disingenuous way, and people won't know better. Yes, Palestinian solidarity activists, people who are up on the issue will know something to some extent, and maybe to a great extent, what's going on. But most people will not know. Most Americans won't know. Most Europeans won't know. Even many Arabs in other places will not know. Uh, these are uh, these clans have not just sprung up, out of nowhere. They're criminal gangs that formed, but they were given assistance years ago by the Palestinian Authority and the CIA, and then Israel took over the funding and the backing of these groups. And they limit, of course, what kind of arms. They give them only very small arms. They give them night vision goggles, but they don't give them much in the way of tech. And they give them some radios so they can communicate. Very low level stuff. But in Gaza, considering what Hamas operates with and what the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and other factions operate with, that's more than enough. And so this is being set up, and it looks like it's being set up to restart the genocide. As I said, Israel has already kind of set the date. They want to do this in early March. Whether that will align entirely with Donald Trump's agenda, who knows? And that may affect when this actually starts. But we are heading toward a restart of the full-blown genocide. The genocide never ended. The ceasefire is a sham, but for what it's worth, and it's not worth that much, but it means something that less people every day are getting killed. It's something. Uh, the price of that is that less people are paying attention. which is, a big problem. And we need to let people know about this. We need to let people know what's coming, because otherwise there's going to be a story that people can easily buy, whether it is, just Palestinians declaring, that they try to push the idea that Palestinians are declaring en masse that they embrace Hamas and they embrace October 7th, and et cetera, et cetera. Or if they try to come up with more of the nonsense that Joe Biden was spouting at Netanyahu's behest about, beheaded babies and all of this horrifying stuff. Um, Whatever it may be, we're heading towards the justification to restart the full-blown genocide, and we need to raise the alarm about it now, not when the images of Palestinians, Palestinian bodies dismembered and destroyed by Israeli bombs are flooding our phones once again. So I'll leave it there. Please like, subscribe, and share. Support Cutting Through if you can. Um, just spread the word about what's going on here that I'm telling you in this video, because it's really, really important that people know about this. And I will talk to you again soon.